You weren't expecting me? Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Well, it's Wednesday, and Wednesday is usually Wednesday Wind-Up with Brian Goffberg, but he just got back from Switzerland, and he's jet-lagged. Therefore, I am flying solo tonight, back at the helm one more time. Guys, as coincidence happens, I'm going to be outbound to Switzerland in my own right next week. In that vein, welcome to my first of four-part series, My Favorite Travel Watches. Now today we're going to talk about my favorite GMTs and dual times. Future episodes next week and during my excursion are going to focus on world times, are going to focus on geographic style complications, and my personal favorite travel complication, the alarm, so stay tuned. Okay guys, tonight, first things first, let me show you my dual time for the evening. Now this is my Reverso Duo. It's an interesting example with the night and day complications. You can see the night and day aperture at 12 o'clock, and then you flip it over, and you've got the classic Reverso Duo 24-hour format, second time zone and guilloche on the case back. Perfect application for the reversing case watch. This one's white gold, an absolute gem. All right, so now that we've done the wrist shot, we've talked a little bit about the theme for tonight, let me just clarify that Watch You Want is not just one of the largest watch vendors online and one of the oldest in the pre-owned space. We are also the most aggressive, proactive, and responsive buyer of watches. Call us 24 hours a day and we will make you an offer to sell your watch. Again, the easiest way to do it, the best total value package from names you trust. Give my pal Josh a call. Heck, give Brian a call. I don't care how jet-lagged he is, he'll be happy to hear from you. So remember, sell your watch to Watch One. We are also the world's most aggressive watch buyers, in addition to sellers. All right, so here's some thoughts for choosing a travel watch, guys. Two things came to mind based on feedback I've received from viewers. First, know where you're going. A lot of folks have told me that they actually dress down their watch inventory, their watch wardrobe, when they are traveling to far-flung locales. And in particular, one gentleman who regularly had business in Rio de Janeiro told me specifically he never wore a colored gold watch or a watch over 40 millimeters while going to Rio. Apparently there are some challenging parts of the cities where he didn't want to stick his head above the parapet, so to speak. So consider where you're going, ask yourself how well do you know it, and then choose your watch accordingly. Second, let's talk a little bit about the classes of watch, because I blitzed right past it at the beginning. Now there are many ways to travel with your watch. A dual time or a GMT watch is the most natural because you have your home time zone and you have your local time zone. Then there are the world times that give you the world at a glance. You've got that 24-hour reference ring and reference cities next to it. And then there are geographics that sort of blend the two. Think the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Geographic series, or even something like the Nomos Zurich Weltzeit, or the Longa 1 time zone. That's what I'm talking about. And then finally, because when you're off the beaten path and away from your home, you can become disoriented, which is why my favorite travel complication is the alarm. And we're going to hit on all of those during this series. All right, let me just double check all of our friends joining us from around the world, places far flung. I see we have Claudio from downstairs, probably my closest viewer in terms of proximity and geography. Henri, Ruhina, Peter, CQ, Friend of the house, manning the chat, CQ Gottlieb in the chat box. Eddie Landsberg, thank you for joining us. Juan, Matt, Mr. Muttonhollow, David Mercer, Andrew, A. Wilson, and Tom P. Alexi, welcome from Finland, my man. Thanks for joining tonight. All right, so let's ride out into the testing zone and talk about this or that, because yes, indeed, you can play it within one brand and with one man, especially when the man is the brand. So tonight, we're talking about this or that FP Journe. It's where I'm going next week, so it makes sense. But do you pick the FP Journe Chronomètre Resonance with its dual time capability, even though that's not the point, but it has the capability, or do you pick the FP Journe Octa Utc, which is a true travel watch and one that can handle daylight savings time? Okay, well historically they're both available 38 millimeters or 40, but we're sticking with the current collection, so we're sticking with 40. That's what's offered in 2017. Okay, so the Resonance. We first saw it in 2003. It was a watch that was redesigned in 2010. Not everyone loved the winking watch look, as you can see on that Black Label edition. That's the current model, but the current model, while it's not always the stylistic favorite of the purists, is more practical for travel because the second time readout is in 24-hour format. When you need that AM/PM clarity, day-night clarity, that is quite helpful. Now, the watch in 40 millimeters in platinum, and we're going platinum to keep everything apples to apples here, or pomme to pomme, since we are in Geneva, but $82,200, 40 millimeters in platinum. Bracelet options exist, but I'm not considering them here because I prefer a strap with this type of watch. Now, here's the standard version, by the way, guys, for comparison purposes. If you're not already a Journe owner, you're not going to be buying the Black Label, unless you get it pre-owned from us. So that's the standard version right there with the white gold dial and the platinum case. Now, Calibre 1499-3, what is it really? Well, it's two very closely coupled escapements and balances. And guys, if you can keep that image up right there, you can actually see on one of the balance cocks, there's a small ratcheting adjustment that can be used to move them into closer proximity or move them farther apart. And that's because the Untitled principle of resonance, or the incremental energy released by two escapements in close proximity, will cause them to synchronize to each other over a period of minutes. The idea being that errors in one are canceled out by the regulating properties of the other. It's a little bit of horological black magic, but it does work, and FP Journe has built his name on it. Now, 24-hour dial on the current model is perfect for me for travel purposes, but you will have to wind it regularly because it's only a 42-hour power reserve, plus or minus 2 hours. All right, in 4N rose gold, the only way you can get it today, guys, it's a precious metal watch with a precious metal dial with a precious metal movement. I like. But do I like more than the FP Journe Octa Utc? Now, this one's more of a newcomer to the catalog. We first saw this watch in 2011. It's a true dual time, or UTC, because FP Journe likes to distinguish between Greenwich Mean Time, which is determined by geographic boundaries of the Earth, and UTC, which is internationally regulated by the atomic clock. Okay, so this one has a little bit more functionality with automatic winding, thanks to Calibre 1303, also in 4N rose gold, but automatic winding with a 5-day power reserve. This is one that's a bit more autonomous, maybe even a bit more sophisticated, escapement aside. It also gives you the convenience of a date, which can be quite helpful when you set it locally while traveling, as well as a little bit more color. It's a quirky watch, and quirk is an important quality of FP Journe timepieces. There's a bit of the man's own aesthetic sensibility in these, and they are not strictly traditional, and I'm grateful for it. We need more color in high horology. It also uniquely accounts for winter and summer time, so if you live in a place where you have daylight savings time, this watch has that kind of functionality. And the day after I return, October 5th, will be the day we in the United States jump to winter daylight savings time. So ultimately, which one do I choose? Quirky in color, or do I go with the classic? I have to say that I go with the Resonance. This is something like the Tourbillon Remontoire that is so central to the identity of the FP Journe brand, and while the current rock star might be the Chronomètre Bleu, you might argue that perhaps something like the Sontograph is the most visually spectacular. The Resonance, the Tourbillon, and the Resonance in particular are the specialties of the house, and this is the one, the bedrock. FP Journe's own Submariner, his Navitimer, his Speedmaster Pro. This is the one I'm going with. Okay, so from high horology to the street, we take it a little bit more discreet. So let's talk about two standards and a thoroughbred when you want to keep a low profile. First, let me jump to the chat box, guys, and acknowledge those of you who are joining us just now. Jonathan Rasmussen mentions that he always goes to his GMT Master 2 when he travels. I know Sequan right here is encouraging folks to join our Watch You Want live Facebook group that Eddie Landsberg started. Please do, we need more members. And I can see that Eric Nielsen is mentioning that he has 3 GMTs. He has a Bulova Accutron Astronaut, Breitling Aerospace, and a Sin 857. So he is strapped for travel. I appreciate that certainly. JBO Surf joining in, John Tsai, and John GT3. Welcome, guys. Eric Nielsen, yes, they throw the aerospace a bone now and then. That's my favorite quartz watch, guys. You gotta know, I'm all about the aerospace. And that might make an appearance in a future episode in this installment series. Okay, but I do want to mention that if you're gonna go discreet and travel with a classic, we're going to Geneva, guys. It's all about Rolex. The Rolex Explorer 2, but not the current reference, the 16570. 40 millimeters stainless steel pre-super case. This is a watch that cuts a lower profile on the wrist than a rotating bezel GMT. For discretion, classicism, a balance between sports watch ruggedness and dress watch balance. It's a great option and it fits any wrist. Unlike the 42 millimeter current reference, which is a bit polarizing, this one's almost universally loved. And it's a true dual time, unlike the original 1655 Explorer 2s. So this has 2 true time zones, including one with the 24-hour format to keep track of those far-flung friends when you are abroad, or when they're abroad, the other benefit of a travel watch. Now, 40 millimeters in steel feels just about right to me. Dual time zones, a date, automatic winding, equal aplomb in a business suit or a bathing suit. Doesn't really matter where you're going. The older watch was perfect. The new one's almost an offshore. But another virtue of the older watch is if you go pre-2003, pre-F-Series, you can get what you're looking at right there, which is perforations in the lugs. Now, with a simple pin, you can quickly dress it down and throw it on a NATO or throw it on a strap. That's one of the advantages, and in fact, the original design purpose of the perforated lug Rolex sports watches. So keep that in mind if you think you might want to be a little bit more casual with this watch and bring a strap option. Always easier to travel with one watch and several straps than several watches. The other thing to remember is that you also have a white dial option with these. And although less commonly seen, for some, this is the aesthetic they prefer. The blend of the silver and the white makes the watch look a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more Miami. It's a little bit more LA Sunset Strip. So if you're going to the French Riviera instead of Rio, or you're going to the Copacabana and you know the area well, this might be the one for you. Okay. Also, remember, guys, another huge advantage for us watch collectors over the GMT Master Series is that the Explorer 2 has always been a bit unloved. No lack of respect, but the popularity of the GMT relative to the Explorer 2 means you can pick these up for less. So you can buy the previous generation Explorer 2 in great condition with accessories, typically between $4,500 and $5,500, maybe the best one in the world for $6,500. So keep that in mind, and also keep in mind, personally, I don't think there's any reason to pay a premium for the later Calibre 3186s that were scattered in there towards the end of the line. The old watch with the next-gen movement is not necessarily a collector's piece. It's a conversation piece. So don't forget that fact. Okay, so Watch Yoda joining us. I can see Clive is joining us, Eradicator 7. Philip Sebastian, welcome. Philip Sebastian Peterson is asking me, when did the Explorer 2 change its movement? I assume he's asking about the change from the 3185 to the 3186. Probably during the Z series, no later, certainly. In general, when you see the engraved Rayhaut inside, adjacent to the dial, inside the bezel, that's usually your sign that you're looking at a 3186. I don't generally subscribe to the does the 24-hour hand shake theory when you're adjusting local time, because I've seen both 3185s and 3186s shake. So there is no perfect Explorer 2 5-digit reference case movement. But remember, I don't think it's a selling point. I don't think it's an investment point. I think it's just a curiosity. On the GMTs, that's a different matter. Now, Patek Philippe has made some great travel time watches over the years, but instead of reaching straight for the Aquanaut travel time, guys, consider classicism, the low profile, and discretion. It is our lesson today. The Patek Philippe 5134G the Calatrava Travel Time would be my choice. First of all, this is a hugely underappreciated watch. Short-lived, came out in 2003, it was dead by 2008, but it combined a beautiful profile with classical Calatrava design cues with the Louis Cotier system of incremental reference hour adjustment using the pusher adjusters on the 9 o'clock side. This is a watch that is literally the direct descendant of the vintage Cotier influenced 2597. So that's a watch that's a investment grade, sell your house, mortgage what you own, sell off the children as indentured servants. That's a desirable watch. But here's the thing, you can have a watch with all of its functionality and flair for between $15,000 and $20,000. No need to sell off the kids, no need to barter with kidneys. It's that simple. Now, $15,000 to $20,000 spans the yellow gold and the white gold versions. There were a couple of different dial options during the short life of this watch, but I would say no need to go nuts. You can pick up a good white gold one with boxes, papers, and the all-important Patek Certificate of Origin for about $16,000 to $17,500. And if you like a clean aesthetic, and I know Brian Goffberg, who's usually sitting here in command on Wednesday, hates the GMT hand, you can superimpose local hour over your reference hour so that you don't have to see the second time zone when you don't need it. The other important thing to remember is that this is a Patek Philippe traditionally sized at 37 millimeters with simple blended lugs, so it doesn't raise your profile uncomfortably for those times when you're traveling and you don't want to cut a rut. Also important, it wears beautifully in almost any attire. It's perfect, you can see that. That's my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. I've done a review of that watch in the past. By the way, Watch You Want watch reviews, guys. If you want to see my old style 5 to 7 minute quick hits, it's my other channel. Watches going live every day. But a handsome 215 caliber on that beautiful watch on the other side, so you are getting real horological value here. It's not just a sophisticated complication, it's sophisticated finishing, beautifully made and visible through the screwed-in display case back. Finally, important to remember that for those of you who must have a sports watch and a Patek Philippe, but you want to travel in style and keep track of those far-flung friends, there is the Aquanaut 5164 Travel Time. Since 2011, arguably the Aquanaut, just not as classically beautiful as the 5134. Okay, so question coming in from Ruhina asking me, Tim, what are your thoughts on the new Blancpain 50 Fathoms 40 millimeter case? I like it. It's a limited edition that's out for this year. It's a mil-spec tribute. It is a little bit decontented compared to the 5015, and I have to say that if I had to pick between it and the Bathyscaphe 38, I'd probably err on the side of the Bathyscaphe 38. The 5015 to me just is the 50 Fathoms. And to go from the 1315 caliber to an 1150, which isn't quite as tough and frankly not as at home in a sports watch, to go from that beautiful 50 Fathoms dial with all applied indices and numerals, white gold with white gold hands, to a printed dial, to me it's a nice historic tribute watch, but the core of what the 50 Fathoms collection has become in the modern era is luscious excess. It's the most deluxe diver not called Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. And you know what? I think it goes toe-to-toe even with that. That's the 5015 in 45 millimeters. The 40 millimeter watch is the 50 Fathoms to where if you don't want to dive into the shark tank of the vintage world, and perhaps you don't like the gaudiness of the 45, or you can't fit the 45 on your wrist, I think it's a good watch. I think it's nicely made. I just think the 5015 compared to the 40, the 45 millimeter 5015 is a great watch. So that's my thought on that. Now, also worth mentioning, if you're going to look at the 40 millimeter 50 Fathoms, remember, go back to 2003 to the 50th anniversary watch. That's 40 millimeters, gives you just as much value without the brand new watch sticker shock. Remember, before 2007, they were all 40 millimeters. And then Since I've gone through my 3 faves in Geneva, I've got Rolex, I've talked about FP Journe, and I've talked about Patek Philippe, let's throw in a wild card, Laurent Ferrier Galet Traveller. Okay, also of Geneva, beautiful. That photo doesn't do it justice, by the way, but the combination of the blue dial, cobalt with the azure blue highlights, and the white gold case is stunning. 41 millimeters, this is how Laurent Ferrier, once a complication specialist with Patek and noted race car driver, does a travel watch. Now it has the same kind of convenience as the Patek with the case flank 9 o'clock side, pusher adjusters for the local time zone, and it has a very convenient, easily read aperture style 24-hour second time zone. Now this is a watch that I got my hands on a few days ago, and I have to say I absolutely loved it. Everything from the feel to the quality to the 3-inch with a 12-power loop finish on the movement. And by the way, guys, the aperture second time zone is beautifully executed to the point where even the details of the frame, the calibration, and the disc are beautiful. That's the level of anguish, blood, sweat, and tears lavished on this timepiece. I should also say it has the same friendly plus-minus system that you get on Ulysse Nardin and Patek, so traveling is made easy. And it's discreet like the Patek at 41 millimeters in a white metal. But more interesting from an emotional perspective, the micro rotor caliber LF230.01 gives you an 80-hour power reserve, which is super. Beautiful finishing, the convenience of an automatic, which you don't get in that old Calatrava travel time, and also a very horologically interesting dual direct impulse escapement. These are rare in the industry. There are only about half a dozen of them kicking around, and Laurent Ferrier does one of the most serviceable, reliable, and visible examples. You can actually see it operating when you look at the watch. About $44,000 to $46,000 pre-owned, and we're lucky enough to have one. So if you want to check this out and make it yours before I bust out on my trip, check out watchyouwant.com. Now, let me know, guys, what watches do you like to take with you while traveling? Most people travel with some sort of a dual time or an alarm, but I'll admit that I've heard some wacky stories over the years. There have been some folks who travel with their lucky watches, and those have run the gamut from swatches to inherited timepieces from grandfather to one guy who actually loved to travel with a Breitling Navitimer spaciograph. If you've never seen the late 90s, early 2000s spaciograph, it's a unique aviator's countdown chronograph that actually counts minutes and half minutes down from 10. Crazy watch, but this guy was obsessed with it because he liked to start the countdown when his pilot was getting ready to land. It made him feel more secure. These are emotional objects, guys. I'm not going to judge. So what do you like traveling with, guys? I see that John Sai is a fan of the Longa time zone. Yes! Grand Longa style since 2005 with a little bit of a hybrid setup. It's not a pure dual time, it's a geographic. You have your second time zone and then you have your reference cities. You set your reference city and the watch does the math. Plus it's got the Longa L031 movement, I want to say. Beautiful on both sides. That's the great thing about Longa. I can also see Phillipe travels with his Fortis B42 GMT or Vulcain Nautical. Those both make a lot of sense, and it's also cool because with Fortis you can get a chronograph that's also an alarm. So that's a pretty cool travel option in its own right. I also see that Ramiro is traveling with his Longines Weems watch, appropriate enough for those who wander the world by plane. Little hook that ties us to our aviation heritage and early navigation. And I can see that A. Wilson says, if third world Casio F91. Like I said, sometimes you have to dress down to the occasion while traveling. All right, guys, keep them coming. I see we've got one Globemaster Master Coaxial right there. And I can see that John GT3, he goes with the emotional appeal. He travels with his Lucky Chopard. Not necessarily a travel watch, but one he likes to travel with. Okay, guys, so I've got great values for those of you who aren't willing to sell non-redundant organs. And I have to admit, a couple of times, JLC's UTT, which we'll get to later, has caused me to Google, for instance, kidney. But great values don't depend on great wealth. For instance, the Baume & Mercier Clifton GMT Power Reserve. This is the reference 10316. This actually came out this year at SIHH, and I remember being very impressed by this watch because of the value you get. One of the best dual-time releases at any price at SIHH this year. This one only costs $3,690 US, bargain well, and you may come off paying less than that. Now here's the thing, superb dial detail. I love the applied numerals and indices, I love the use of color, I love the crisp printing, the rich and deep sunburst grain with the superb dial detail. You feel like you're getting a more expensive watch, and that's really one of the calling cards of a well done, well executed timepiece. Does it feel and look more expensive than it is? A lot of times that comes down to dial execution, and Baume & Mercier absolutely nailed it. You're also getting lively color, a lot of complication with a date, a power reserve, a second time zone, and you're getting an automatic high-grade ETA. That's right, Baume & Mercier is still using a real ETA caliber in there, and I can tell, thanks to the flare of the spokes of the balance wheel, that it's not an entry-level ETA either in there. It's either a top or chronometer grade, so they invested in getting one of the better grades and then elaborating it to be more attractive on top of that. So I give them a lot of credit for building mechanical value into a watch that looks the part. Also, remember, for under $3,700 US at 43 millimeters and 12 millimeters thick. It's on the large side for a dress watch, but you can pull it off because that is the style today. And again, practicality and value both in this Baume & Mercier Clifton GMT Power Reserve. Or if you're even more strapped, but you don't want to go with some no-name micro brand or a fashion watch, consider a real watch, Longines Conquest GMT. Okay, now we're talking price range around $1,600 US, 41 millimeters stainless steel, and nicely executed. This is Swatch Group, so you're getting a real ETA in there, not some knockoff, not some company that's trying to learn how to copy an ETA caliber, the real thing nicely assembled. And again, a real luxury watch with a warranty, with a secondary market, with serviceability 1, 2, 3, 100 times, and a service life that is guaranteed to exceed yours. Why buy some, micro brand clone of another micro brand made in some factory no one's ever heard of using parts that don't make the grade, or a fashion watch for a price that approaches this? I've seen fashion watches that cost a lot of money, guys. For $1,600, buy it well, buy it pre-owned, you're going to come in less than that. This is a lot of timepiece for your money. And at 41 millimeters, it's not too large or boisterous to be considered a dress watch as well as your sports watch. So definitely consider this. Automatic, 50-meter, water-resistant, hacking, quickset, dual time, and a second time zone on a full bracelet. That's real value when the time comes to travel. Okay, so let's see, what do you guys travel with right here? Okay, so I see Val Blitz is saying that the Nomos Zurich is a great value. This is a fact. Now, I consider that one to be more of a geographic, but expect it to make an appearance in my follow-up to this feature. When we talk about geographic watches, that's going to be one of the leading lights among value options in the geographic travel watch category. Also, I can see Ramiro is talking about Fortis Flieger 24-hour in PVD. Ruhina travels with Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Dual Time, great choice. And I can see that Watch Yoda is traveling with multiple watches for multiple time zones. That's a good point. Why have a dual time watch when you can have dual one-time watches? If that's your style and that floats your boat, definitely go with it. I know I've worn 2 Reversos at once in the past, one of which was a dual time, so I had 3 times going simultaneously. Okay, and I also want to mention, guys, that we're back to the whole idea of a GMT and a dual time, because we really need to define what those are and why we don't just say dual time watch. What is a GMT versus a dual time, and can they be mutually exclusive? Well, actually, yes. There is a bare minimum requirement to be considered a GMT style watch. There has to be some way to distinguish between a 24-hour constant time indication and 12-hour time. Remember, you don't have to have dual mechanically defined time zones to be a GMT, because the Rolex GMT Master 6542, which was in pilot production by 1954, was a single time zone watch. And the idea was that you would align your watch to Greenwich Mean Time, so the 24-hour hand would always indicate Greenwich Mean Time. And then using the bezel, which was calibrated day-night or 24 hours with two sides, different shades, you would then offset from the 24-hour hand using the GMT offset of the local airport into which you were flying. That's a GMT, giving you clear and concise indication of 24-hour format time. Now, a dual time watch, which that is not, gives you two time zones. So the original Rolex GMT was not a dual time, but it was a GMT. By the same token, a Panerai Rodiomir 3 days GMT PAM 570, which is not only called a GMT by its maker, but has GMT written on the dial, is not a GMT. Because in order to display Greenwich Mean Time, you need some sort of indication of at least AM, PM to match that second time zone indicator. If it's not in 24-hour format and there's not a separate moving 24-hour bidirectional bezel, you need at least the AM, PM distinction. That doesn't have it. So we throw these terms around loosely, not the same thing, guys. Okay. So from solid values to definitions to crazy stuff, we get to go loopy again. And we start at the top of the heap. Maitres du Temps, a great independent in the mold of the Harry Winston Opus series or Max's MB&F concept, where you take great masters and, working solely or in collaboration, you produce great masterpieces. Now, the Maitres du Temps Chapter 3, which is about 97,000 to a little over 100 new, 39 to 50,000 pre-owned, was the watch that put Stephen Holtzman's collaboration project on the map. The Maitres du Temps Chapter 3, and we've got some great images of this watch coming up, is a watch that was wearable at 42 millimeters, that was readable with a simple dual-time complication, and I don't know if we have a picture of their Chapter 1 before we go to the Chapter 3, but they were doing like this sort of thing before they did the Chapter 3. And that's awesome, but first of all, my head spins just looking at it. Second of all, my wrist can't accommodate that dreadnought. That thing is a monster. So when you're talking about a really expensive watch, it's good to take that small pool of buyers and make them physically able to wear the watch. And that's what the Chapter 3 accomplished, while also paring down the cost. Now, I want to emphasize that Andreas Streller and Kari Voutilainen were the masters that Stephen Holtzman brought in to style and engineer this watch. Streller was involved in hiding the complication and industrializing the production process. Kari had more input into the finishing and the style of the watch. And so it's the smartest system you'll find for displaying a second time zone with AM/PM clarity. So easily the smartest system. It's also wonderfully opaque when you don't want to see it. So they're there and gone, the shutters that display the second time zone. Come on, guys, I know we've got a picture of the Chapter 3 in here somewhere. No pictures? Okay. Well, all the same, there are tons of options for those of you who want the Chapter 3. So you have many customization choices. Now here you can see a little bit about what I'm talking about with the shutters open on the dial. At the base, you have clarity between AM, PM. An hour is at the base, I should say, and you have a little moon or a sun at the top on roller drums. Rose gold. Do you want yellow gold? Do you want platinum? Do you want white gold? Do you want a blue dial? Do you want a green dial? Do you want enameling? Do you want miniature painting? Do you want engraving? Everything's on the table with the Chapter 3. This is what a dual-time high horology independent complication should look like. And I'll also mention custom engraving is on the table, and we've had a couple of those in the past, and the work they do is stunning. Plus the Calibre SHC03, and you can see a little bit of the custom engraved case there. The Calibre SHC03 is finished the way you would expect a Voutilainen caliber to be finished, with absolutely nothing lost in the translation from brand to brand. This one did its maker proud. Okay, so I also want to give a shout out to our friends who are joining us just now. Vinny Ocean, also Eradicator, I got you in there. I want to give a special shout out to Sequan, who is manning the chat tonight and is also answering your questions in real time. 600 Bayview checking in from Moorestown, New York. Of course, Philip Sebastian Peterson asking, Tim, how does ETA compare to Eterna's GMT movements? Well, the thing about ETA and Eterna in general, and anything that's based on the Eterna Calibre 60 is going to have a longer power reserve. It's going to be a little bit more sophisticated with a view towards adding modular complications later on. They tend to be thicker, for instance, than an ETA 2893, which would be a 2892 in dual time format. They're both very tough. It's just easier if you have an ETA to have it serviced any place because parts are available everywhere. And in general, the ETA base movements are thinner. Those are the main differences. A little bit more power reserve with the Eterna, both very nicely made. And they're right across town from each other in Grenchen, Switzerland. So remember, ETA started as a spin-off of Eterna in the 1920s. Okay, so after Maitres du Temps, the Jaeger-LeCoultre Duometre UTT, the JLC Duometre UTT, there we go guys, my graphics team is back in the house. Okay, this is a watch that came out in 2013, 42,500 to about 50,500, depending on whether you're buying this year's rose gold version or that shockingly awesome chiseled dial white gold watch that you're looking at right now. 42 millimeters in rose or white gold, a first of sorts, because I've racked my brain and I can't think of any other Jaeger-LeCoultre wristwatch jump hour ever in the entire history of the company. So this is not just a first, it's a stunning first. Even if it does look a little bit like a watch sucking on a marble, I can forgive that because it's got color and it's got character. And it's useful because you can also set the minutes of the second time zone independently. You want a weird North Korean time zone that's divergent from the rest of that part of the world? Do you want an airport that has its own 15-minute GMT offset from standard time? You can do that with the UTT. Plus you have that fun little rotating globe at 6 o'clock. And the dual drivetrain Calibre 383 rivals Lange. In material, it's the same sort of German silver, nickel copper. It's laid out the same way. It has the same depth, the openness, the easy viewing, and short of something like the Sphero Tourbillon or the Grand Sonnerie, this is the most complicated standard Duometre dual-wing caliber you can buy with 54 jewels and 498 parts. It takes a lot to make that second time zone jump hour happen. 2 powertrains, 2 drivetrains, 2 movements in one case. That is the Duometre UTT. Okay, Parmigiani Toric Hemispheres, guys. This is a new version of a watch that's been around for a while. The Toric Hemispheres from Parmigiani takes the previous Tonda Hemispheres movement, the PF317 automatic, where you can set the reference time zone to the nearest minute, like the JLC, stacking the two vertically, and it puts it in a just frankly more attractive case. The prior Tonda Hemispheres was not a very attractive watch, I've got to admit. Mechanically brilliant, aesthetically it was a little bit chaotic. I didn't like the look of it, even though I'm usually a fan of the Michel Parmigiani tapered teardrop lug case. The dials never did anything for me here. With the Toric, that is corrected. It's 42.8 millimeters with a gorgeous granular cream dial. Really nice. Looks great from an arm's length, looks even better under a loop. Beautiful watch, currently only available 42.8 millimeters in rose gold, but a 2017 debut, I expect different variants and metal options to proliferate. And of course, a movement to match, that Parmigiani PF17 automatic base dual barrel, 50-hour power reserve. It has an Agénor module on top. What does that mean? Well, Jean-Marc Viderecht of Agénor was the man behind the Harry Winston Opus 9, and anything he designs or that comes from his atelier has a serious high horology pedigree. You're getting Parmigiani and Agénor. That's a great team right there for me. Finally, our final watch, a spectacular watch, a watch so grand, well, frankly, it has grand in its name, the Glashütte Original Senator Cosmopolite. Actually, it's derived from the Grand Cosmopolite tourbillon. So the tourbillon came out in 2012, also packed a tourbillon and a perpetual calendar. This model came out in 2015. What does it give you for your roughly $43,000 to $45,000 rose gold or white gold? Well, it gives you 36 time zones, plus the ability to accommodate daylight savings and standard time, plus a power reserve scale, plus twin AM/PM distinction for your local and reference time, plus a 72-hour power reserve, plus automatic winding. You get the sense that they're giving you a lot with this watch? Well, that's because they do. And at 44 millimeters across and 14 millimeters thick, this is pushing the limits for a precious metal dress watch. But if you're going to do something that's a little bit outrageous, do it well with complete conviction and a straight face. And Geo did it with this watch. One of the ultimate options for a world traveler. This one requires a little bit of learning, but rest assured, as soon as I get one in my hand, I'm going to have an instructional video up on Watch You Want watch reviews. And of course, the stunning automatic caliber 8902 on the back is another reason to tune in for my eventual review, because it's a 3/4, not micro rotor, it's a 3/4 rotor with a hand-engraved duplex balance bridge with duplex black polished swan's neck fine regulators. This is how Saxony does a travel watch, assuming you're not wearing a Longo 1 time zone, right guys? Okay, so again, this is one I can't wait to have under my camera lens. And remember, Watch You Want watch reviews is my other channel. If you don't have time to watch one of my full broadcasts, just subscribe to Watch You Want watch reviews and get my old style on the wrist quick hits. Fast and easy, the hardware store opens 7/24. And remember, if you ever want to buy or sell a watch, WatchYouWant.com is your landing place on the web. It is where you touch down when the watch just isn't getting enough love, or you want to trade an old love for a new flame. The easiest way to buy and sell watches. We answer the phone 24 hours a day, so no matter where you are, Singapore, Hong Kong, watch meccas on the other side of the globe, give us a call. We'll be waiting for it. Thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. I want to thank Sequan for manning the live chat. Late arrivals, guys like Coco, guys like A. Wilson. I want to thank Watch Yoda, all of our usual crew for making this a blast. I enjoyed the interaction, and thank you to my live crew. Even if we didn't have the Chapter 3 pictures, I still appreciate all the hard work you put into programming this episode. Because I'm Tim, this is Watch You Want, they're the three amigos, and thanks for logging on.